The Girdle. My mother was the caregiver, homemaker, and disciplinarian. She was the everyday, hands-on parent. My father was always away from home when I was growing up. He had a family of 9 boys and 2 girls, I being the youngest. The first 5 were boys, and as soon as they were old enough to do the farming, Dad had a job off the farm. My oldest brother was born in 1913, and with a growing family and a mortgage to pay on the farm, there was definitely a need for a second income. During that period, there were some bad years for income from the farm, and then top it off with the Great Depression of 1929. The jobs took him out of the home every day, and therefore it was my mother present daily when I was growing up at age 4, 5, 6, and all through my school years. In spite of that situation, I have some memories and have heard impressive stories from my older siblings about my mom and dad. My dad's father and mother both immigrated to America. He from Alsace-Lorraine and she from Poland. Their family grew up very appreciative of our country and proud to be American. I can think back and understand how my dad, after his first job off the farm, which was managing the elevator, he was asked, led, and convinced to get into politics. My dad was well known, liked, and respected in a wide breadth of the community and was always outspoken with common sense in his beliefs. He believed in America and the flag and would go around to different city service organizations or anywhere that he could and give a presentation and history on the flag. Being a member of the Knights of Columbus, the Elk Lodge, the Moose Lodge, he had good connections even in other towns in the area. He was gifted with a good loud-speaking voice and used it advantageously in his presentations. He would take with him to the meetings an American flag and a state flag of Illinois, each on its own staff, so it could be set on the floor beside the podium. To transport them, he had to put them in the car from the right front windshield across the seat back to the left rear corner. This one night, his presentation was to be at the Knights of Columbus meeting 30 miles away, and a fellow knight and neighbor said he would accompany my dad so he would not have to make the trip alone. He was a soft-spoken, soft-hearted, big, strong, down-in-the-dirt brute of a man. I knew Frank later as I grew up. He was the catcher on our softball team. My dad picked him up at the house down the road, a couple of miles, and because of the flags, he had to sit in the rear seat on the right side of the car. After they got on the highway down the road a bit, there was an accident with several people injured. An ambulance was already at the scene, and it left to take the more serious injured person to the hospital. Another person needed to go to the hospital as well, so my dad offered to take her. The state patrolman knew my father, so they put her in the back seat with Frank. The next morning, my mother, who would drive us to school most of the time and attend daily mass, got in the car with the kids in the back seat when one of them picked up something from the floor and asked, "What's this, Mom?" As they held it up, it was a girdle with dirty footprints on it. What a surprise! What a picture it brings to mind. Her husband was out with the car the night before and did get home rather late. She put it on the floor behind her feet and stopped at the neighbors to pick up their kids and then on to school and mass before going home. I don't know how the conversation went that morning, but I am sure my dad had to explain about the accident and taking the woman to the hospital. Probably on the way she had pain, and Frank removed her girdle and threw it or dropped it on the floor, not thinking of it again. At the hospital emergency entrance, she was hurriedly taken in, and Dad and Frank went on their way to the meeting. But what a shock in the morning. A girdle on the floor in the back seat. She must have believed his story. They remained married for 57 years when he died at age 78. I have thought about that happening and my mother many times. She seemed to go on her normal routine, taking the kids to school, attending Mass before going home. How many of us would have done it that way? Truly a display of trust and complete confidence in the love of her husband. Knowing my father, I'm sure this story of the girdle is the way it was. Bernie. My mother, an outline for living. A young man, age 18, leaves the warmth, shelter, and safety of his home. Now, away from his parents, he is suddenly faced with the world and everything in it, some good and an abundance of bad, but he is never able to escape the love of his mother. In boot camp that first Sunday, I woke and thought of Sunday Mass. I headed out alone to the drill hall. Mass is the same all over the world. The church is structured to be the same everywhere. As I went on with my life, no matter where I was stationed, Mass was the same, just the location different. In boot camp, it was the large drill hall. In sonar school on Naval Base, it was a small white wooden chapel. There I even sang in the choir. When at sea, there was no offer on my size ships. When anchored or tied up in port, I could go ashore and attend Mass at the provided location or at the base chapel. No matter where, the Mass was the same as when I was home. It was there I found the comfort and friendship of others that believed and carried out their practice the same as I. A warm family wherever I went. It was always a welcome, beautiful happening in my life, where otherwise there would have been nothing like back home. No matter where I went, I had my core of rules and tools for survival. When I proceeded to different duty stations and found it quite easy to adjust, I realized why. I had the playbook. Whatever was called, I knew what my part was to make it succeed. Follow the playbook. All the details of the play were spelled out. All I had to do was follow the directions put forth by the most favored coach of all time, the instructions from the Bible, and the umbrella of the structured church. I must have been given the playbook during my childhood, through rearing by my parents. As a good player in a sport, you have to memorize the playbook so when your number is called, you know immediately and instinctively what to do. I learned many prayers by memory while working in the garden beside my mother, such as prayers to Mary and the 15 mysteries of the Rosary. During May, the month of Mary, and October, the month of the Rosary, the whole family got on our knees and prayed the Rosary every night together, after supper before doing the dishes. We observed all the holy days of obligation and fasting and abstaining rules during Lent and Advent. We all learned and followed the rules and instructions of the playbook and practiced them faithfully. When it was our time to face the world alone, we were ready. She was a great cook and a wise mother. She gave me more than fresh bread and warm cookies. There are gifts and there are blessings. Her gifts were life, work, and love, but long-lasting and most appreciated was her blessing, an outline for living. Bernie. Mother, and laundry was a major factor. Mothers have to be an extension of the arm of God. I know all are different, but I was reminiscing about what it might have been like for my mother, Catherine Stremlau, who lived on a farm with animals, 9 boys, and a husband, which made laundry a major factor. She started married life January of 1913 and birthed her first son November of 1913, the first of 12 children. She had 10 boys and 2 girls. The 8th boy died at age 2 months, so she raised only 11. Living on the farm was good because it gave my parents the ability to garden and can vegetables, milk cows, raise hogs and chickens, thus providing much of the necessary foods. There was the horse barn with 6 to 8 horses' stalls, which needed to be cleaned regularly. The milk cow barn also needed to be cleaned out daily with pitchforks, and the 10 to 12 cows we milked by hand morning and night. The older boys were doing most of that work during the early days, and younger ones were playing in the barn and getting dirty. None of them stayed clean, which means washing clothes was a major factor on the farm. It was probably the toughest job of the week for Mom. Not only did animal residue stick to the shirts and jeans, but a lot of the dirt and dust from the field, and with machinery there was also mixed in oil and grease, which made for a lot of different dirty clothes. Monday was wash day, and she heated wash water in the basement in the open-topped boiler with coal and corncob fire. Then, with a bucket, filled her double-tub Dexter washing machine with hot water and the 2 rinse tubs with cold. She had sorted all the laundry into piles of color. The first loads were always white shirts, bedding, towels, dresses, and aprons. After the white clothes and linens, she proceeded to the dirtier outdoor shirts, jeans, and grease and animal residue, and ended with carpets from the back porch and entranceway. Since the water was too hot to put your hands into, you used the 2-foot-long laundry stick to fish them out of the hot water and put them through the wringer into the next wash tub for a second washing. From there to the first rinse water and then to the second. Here you rustled the clothes around with your hands to get the soap and wash all the wash water out, then through the wringer again and into the basket. It was always hot in the washroom. You had the fire to heat the water, your humidity over the hot water tubs, and with that stick lifting out the heavy wet clothes multiplied the weight. You worked up a good sweat. Laundry was a major factor. The heavy wet clothes were carried up the outside steps to be hung on the line, which had to be high enough so nothing touched or flapped on the ground while drying. You had to lift it up high, and each piece was clipped to the line with clothespins. Great exercise. When dry, it was taken down, folded, put into baskets, carried into the house, and distributed to the bedroom for each person. My mother always had each kid's clothes marked with their initials sewn on the band or the shirt collar. Socks marked on the toes were matched, shirts folded or on hangers, white shirts, good dresses, etc., set aside for ironing on Tuesday. Monday was a workout day. Like I said, laundry was a major factor. Remember, after the first baby, she was pregnant 11 more times in the next 20 years and nursing each baby. Can you imagine the number of times Mother did this, in addition to the other responsibilities of a mother, like baking all our bread, having farm-like dinners and suppers ready every day, and school children provided with clothes and lunches? Discipline and manners passed out to all as needed. Gardening, planting, weeding, harvesting, and canning. Laundry was still the major factor. It wasn't until a couple of years after I was born that we got electricity to the farm, and she got the new Dexter double tub washing machine. Before that, she did it with the old pull, push, dasher, and hand-cranked wringer, which was during that period of time the family was growing, adding numbers regularly. for my mother, laundry was a major factor. Mother, mother, you are an extension of God. Bernie. Our mother developed heart trouble. My brother Kenny and I were still in grade school, and even with older brothers and sisters, we helped. As they married and left home, Kenny and I took over. When in high school, we got up Monday mornings at 4:30 and did the laundry and hung it out before we went to school. This was in addition to our normal outside chores of feeding the livestock. By this time, our dad had sold off the milk cows, thank God, and we had a nice herd of Black Angus beef cows that had calves which the following year went to our feedlot for fattening in preparation for market. You can see there were still a fair amount of outside chores to be done as well. Bernie. Mother. Mothers are in partnership with God. They are needed for the continuation of the human race and any other species you can think of. The whole process of reproduction is a miracle to me. The fertilizing of an egg in the human mother, or a chicken, or a flower blossom, or a cornstalk. It is the pollen. Some by wind, some by bees or insects. What miracles! Now my question becomes, what is it that makes that mother love? I once thought it took place after birth was given, the build-up while carrying the baby, then the pain of childbirth. I see a mother with a handicapped child develop an even deeper love than would seem likely for a normal child, a child that might need everything done for it. I saw two married sisters in their 60s care for their older dying father for more than a year. They seemed to experience more grief than some others whose parents died suddenly or without a long period of care and sacrifice. Then I look at the chicken, a duck, a bird that just lays an egg, maybe daily or for months, but when the hatching takes place, without the pain of childbirth, they step up, fight, and lead their little ones, willing to fight to the death to protect them. When I decided to write about my mother here near Mother's Day, I couldn't get my mind around it to even start writing. My mother was so much. Where and how would I start? Where could I stop? Was she a good mother? I don't know for sure. She's the only one I had. What makes a mother good? I sort through possible situations in a child's life, and I come back to thinking a good mother is one who prepares her child for life. She teaches them self-discipline. They can't have everything right now, and if they work for it, they will appreciate it more. Did they learn self-respect? Feel good about themselves and know right from wrong? As a lesson I learned probably in 3rd grade, if it's not yours, don't take it. Even if you find something which has been lost by someone else, doesn't mean you can take it and keep it. Stealing is taking what is not rightfully yours. In 3rd grade, we would sometimes be called to go to the blackboard and do an arithmetic problem or spelling words. The chalk was always broken into small pieces and worn down. I hated writing with these little stubs of chalk. One day, there was actually a piece that was just less than a half of a stick, which I got to use. When I finished at the board, I slipped the chalk into my pocket, so I would always have a nice piece to use. On laundry day, Mom would go through all the pockets so nothing would ever get into the washing machine that shouldn't. That evening, I was questioned sternly as to where I got the chalk. Of course, I took it from school. There wasn't any punishment, but I had to return it the next day. It would be very easy. All I would have to do is walk around the front of the classroom and place it on the chalk tray as I walked by. That was punishment enough. I just knew everyone, including the nun, would see me and know that I was a thief. I got the job done in spite of all my fear and angst. I can't remember any time since in my life that I took something that didn't belong to me. Did my mother prepare me for that life with that little microcosm of discipline? There is no good place to stop talking about my mother. There are millions of examples of her wisdom and kindness. I should probably write a book about her. I could title it St. Catherine, Mother of Bernard. Bernie. How my mother set our house on fire. Fire, fire, get out, wake up. Fire, take your pants and shoes and get out. I was 4 or 5 years of age. Because I was not yet going to school, I remember. My mother screaming up from the bottom of the steps to the upstairs where all the bedrooms were and all the family was still asleep. By the time my brother Kenny and I made it down the steps and went through the kitchen to the back door, I could feel the kitchen floor was very warm. We were told, get out the back door to the car in the garage and get dressed. By that time, my older brothers and sisters were throwing whole dresser drawers out of the bedroom windows. If the drawer didn't pass through, they threw out the contents. The lawn below became littered with drawers, broken apart, and pieces of clothing. I was not allowed to re-enter the house. With fear and the commotion, I don't have a recollection of the fire truck arriving from midtown, but I know it did. The fire was put out and was contained to the basement. I remember going into the washroom where the fire was centered later and seeing the black charred rafters and wall framing. They were roughed in wood walls, no plaster or plasterboard. How did this happen? How did my mother start our house on fire? It was early Monday morning, before daylight, and she was getting the fire going in the boiler to heat water for laundry day. She put her corn cobs in the firebox and then went to sprinkle them with kerosene, but the can was empty. She told us later she hurriedly went up the outside stairway so not to waken anyone going through the house. Down the sidewalk past the well, then the 2-car garage, the cob shed, and the chicken coop, across from most of the farmyard to the end of the machine shed. That's where the gas barrel was for filling at the tractors on the way out to the fields. The 300-gallon fuel barrel was on a stand, so the bottom of it was still higher than a tractor. It had a hose with a squeeze nozzle, and you could fill the tractor by gravity. On the frame beneath the tank were 2 25 or 50-gallon barrels down at human height from the ground, one for kerosene and one for gasoline. In a hurry and in the early morning darkness, she obviously and accidentally filled her kerosene can for the gasoline barrel. Back in the house, she sprinkled the cobs in the firebox, struck a wooden match, and threw it in. Pow! The evaporating fumes, being more flammable than liquid gas itself, exploded. She had to run up the stairs to the door at the bottom of the steps, and that led to the bedrooms. From then on, it was chaos. It so happened the fire truck put out the fire, which did not spread far from the washroom. No one was hurt. The dresser drawers were repaired, and everything was put back in place. As I was growing up, I don't remember anyone talking about the fire or telling about it. I wonder if that was out of respect for my mother. If it was never talked about, did she have feelings of guilt? If so, how did she deal with it? Knowing my dad, I'm sure he accepted it as just an accident happening and made nothing of it. I feel that if I hadn't been there, I would never ever known about it. Bernie.